Yeah, like when I listened to how you speak, I was just curious where know anything about the Stoicism and because it's similar to what you talk about.
Right. Right. Yeah. If you want to expound more on that, because like I said, I just read the overview and I was like, oh, that's dope. That's dope right there.
It's interesting because okay, so you know the movie Gladiator. Are you a movie fan or have you watched Gladiator?
Yes, I watched the first one and I just recently watched the newest one. As a matter of fact.
Uh, oh, great. Okay,
Yeah, I like that movie. That
great.
movie's
So
dope.
yes, I that's one of my like the one of my favorite movies ever is Gladiator.
Mm-hmm.
So the movie is centered around Marcus Aurelius
Mm-hmm.
and his son. Okay, so Marcus Aurelius is one of the probably most well-known Stoic philosophers, also being the emperor. His book Meditations is amazing, and so how I found out about Stoicism just through YouTube videos and coming across, I kept hearing about Marcus Aurelius, and so I went and bought the book, and I was just so enthralled with his wisdom, his insight, his honesty,
Mm-hmm.
like him sharing his vulnerabilities as a strength because he never meant it was like a diary. He never meant for his writings to become public. So he wasn't writing a book. So someone eventually after he passed, many years later, put together all of his writing and made it a book. It's called Meditation. So if you can read it, there's an audio. It's a free audio book on YouTube. I'm a big reader, so I love having the book, but that was the first book that I started reading. And I've always been a Stoic. That's the funny thing. Like I've always been a Stoic, but just didn't know it. But reading that book has really like changed or deepened my perspective of how to really um, um, how to really not really control in the sense that you're repressing something, but how to really stay in your power, I would say, and not give up your power to circumstances and people.
Yeah,
Um,
having emotional resilience, like you said,
mhm.
just having the resilience that you won't let your emotions, take over. So that was one of the main things I saw just reading that overview that they focused on. Being in control of your emotions, making the best decision for yourself, and the things you can help. The things you can't help, then leave it in God's hands. But the best thing to do is always to look out for self. You know, you'll be okay. As far as from what I read. So I was like, man, I believe that too. Like that's for to know that like that Stoic philosophy is impressive in itself to let you know that people been thinking beyond eons for eons of years ago.
Yes, yes. And even before then, there is a mysticism. There's um, ancient practices that we may call pagan or certain aspects
Hmm.
that they were heavily into it as well from a more of a spiritual perspective, right? From the mystic perspective. So the Stoicism is built on logic, but there is an intuitive level to logic, in my opinion. Um, and and so I dwell in both. I dwell in it. I don't think there's a separation, but I dwell in both, just to make it kind of clear in someone's mind. But yeah, the mystics knew about this because there's an ancient martial arts called Wing Chun. I'm not sure if you
Hmm.
know about martial arts, but the philosophy. Okay, there's a legend that um, it was either a martial art started for women or it was created by a woman.
Hmm.
But the theory is and the practice is that your center, like your power is close to yourself. So you want to keep your opponent locked in close to your center of your body. So there's short movements, there's pulling, there's you don't reach out to your opponent, you keep your opponent close to you because that's where you're the strongest. So it kind of mirrors that in a way where you can control what you can't. You keep, your power or your power base is what's in front of you per
Right.
se, and you lose power trying to reach out, make long, kicks and things like that, because you can fall, you can stumble, you can get knocked out. But so I kind of liken to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Focus on what you can control. I see they also heavily agree with nature
Hmm.
and practice. They say they practice. Well, no, I'm sorry. Pursue. They pursue self improvement. So I guess they're always trying to find ways of just the betterment for themselves, which I think I always encourage. Not just myself, but anytime I do a live stream, I always make sure I put that out. Like, you should always strive for the betterment of self. We are all not perfect, but we always can make the best decision for ourselves. Because we have free will, and you should always exercise your free will every day. You shouldn't have anybody thinking for you. We're all our own individual.
Hmm. Yes. Hmm. I agree.
Do you think? Okay, so we got the Stoic philosophy. Do you think? So we fast forward to these times now. Where do you think, as far as like social media, do you think
Hmm.
social media has an impact on just the philosophies in general of things that's already been wrote, but social media kind of makes its own ground rules? Do you think it's altered you know society as we know it now?
Yes, in the sense that, okay, there's a upside to it because people can get exposed to, say, Marcus Aurelius or different types of philosophies, different types of information. So it becomes readily available. That's the upside. I think
Mm,
the downside of it is that, like, say, like, it may take you some of the mystery schools in ancient Kemet, different
mm-hmm,
parts of the world. It took 30 years to even have an initiation. So people are getting access to information and they're not even initiated, or they're underdeveloped in their maturity and mental and emotional faculties to even take that information and apply it the way that, at the highest level, or at a level where it doesn't do any harm to people. So some people who want to, if you're fear based and you haven't developed yourself, you can get lost in social media with all this wonderful information. It's just like saying, if you're a baby, right? And saying you're like 6 months and your mother feeds you, like, when we say, like, a nice, zucchini, heated zucchini and squat, like something like that. It's great food, but can the baby digest it? Does it have teeth to chew? Isn't, it's not equipped at that time, unless you really blend it and spoon feed it in small parts, that the child can even digest it. So
mm,
that's the dark side of it. I think having a lot of these positive and powerful, philosophies and arts and things like that is great. The other side of it is like, you- it requires something of self
right, right.
to assimilate, yeah, these principles and philosophies and art and science, in mysticism.
Hmm. I agree with
How
that.
about you? What do you think? What do you think?
Um like I was saying too, we do have these all different types of literature and philosophies that have all been written, and it's definitely, like you said, information that people can go out and get for themselves. But social media, it's I think now it's much easier because some people now we're seeing the information being transferred onto places like Google, where you can just simply type it in and get the information for yourself. But now social media has like that dark side that you were saying, where people pretty much seeing content that they see online and taking it as face value, and not taking that effort to see what's what, and what's this or what's that. They're just taking it face value, and I think that's a lot of time can be I can see that actually being a detriment to someone instead of actually, you know, taking that initiative to get the information that they want to know for themselves instead of taking everything face value. So I think that's something that the social media can do to people that don't want to go out and get information. It can actually handicap them.
Yet another point to that, that was a great point. Another point to that I would say is from the content creator perspective,
Mm,
um, that having an opinion, um, give you have anyone with an opinion can have a podcast, right?
right,
And which I think is fine, but here we go again. Like there's many historians, healers, etc., who have put 20, 30, 40, 50 years of consistent information, a scholarship. They have a scholarship behind them, not just an opinion.
right,
So what happens with the podcasting, the microphone gives you some sense of credibility, right? And it gives you a platform. And you don't like necessarily have to have your own research, your own scholarship, your own surveys, your own, your own
right,
study. You can just have an opinion
right.
and just talk, which I'm not necessarily against. But what I am saying, I feel there's a lot of people in the podcast community who, with their opinions, there's nothing behind it, or they'll have a statistic and they'll say this backs up my point of view, which isn't very logical, because in order for you to really be logical, you need a lot of data, a lot of perspectives in order to make a logical decision, not a statistic or four statistics. You need a lot of data. So it does skew, in my opinion. Like I said, everyone's entitled to one. It can skew and diminish, I think, scholarship, what it means to be studied and have scholarship, and that meaning you have to have as many years as some of the other historians, but that you do have something behind you besides an opinion, like you're what I'm saying. So I think from the content creator's perspective, there's not a standard, you know what I'm saying, and maybe there shouldn't be one, and that's the beauty of it, you know what I'm saying. So you know
Right,
but
right. And that goes back to and you made a good point as far as the content creator, because it does start with the content creator. And I've said this in I do remember, I forgot which live stream it was, but I said this in a previous live stream where content creators do have a source of power when it comes to creating. And what you put out is effective, especially if you're great at what you do. So you just have to be mindful of, the content that you put out. You got to just be mindful of, the energy, all that, because a lot of that goes into content creating. And it's somebody, like you said, that's in the audience listening to what a content creator is saying, and the influence can be there, because a lot of times that's what usually content creators end up doing. They have an influence, or they're just giving their opinion, so it's going to create some kind of influence, because people they all have their own opinions.